I'm constantly asking people for book recommendations, so when a friend recommended Red Queen, I immediately searched for it in my library's catalog. And that's when I discovered something unexpected. There wasn't just one Red Queen, there are 4 books with that title at my library, in 4 completely different genres. So naturally, I checked out all of them. And thus began my Red Queen Face-Off, a bracket challenge to determine which Red Queen would dominate the reading field. And while I worked through these books, I crocheted a matching project, a red, black, and white tote bag inspired by the Red Queen theme itself, an intricate repeating square pattern, 1 panel for each book. The first matchup was Red Queen by Juan Gomez Jurado versus Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. The Spanish thriller begins with a series of kidnappings connected to wealthy industrial and banking families. But the ransom demand isn't money, it's a mysterious action the victims refuse to discuss, even with police. To solve the case, authorities bring in Antonia Scott, a brilliant but deeply troubled investigator. This book was fast-paced, clever, and thankfully not excessively gruesome, which is always a concern for me with thrillers. Its title references the quote from Through the Looking Glass. It takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. In this novel, the idea reflects how criminal networks evolve so rapidly that law enforcement has to constantly advance just to keep up. Meanwhile, Victoria Aveyard's Red Queen drops us into a dystopian world divided by blood. Reds live in poverty and servitude while Silvers rule society with supernatural abilities, controlling fire, water, mines, or metal itself. The protagonist, Mare Barrow, is a red girl trying to survive through theft and defiance before suddenly discovering she may not fit neatly into either red or silver category. I read this aloud with a 12-year-old, and for much of the book I thought it might not be for me. Barrow's immaturity grated on me at times, and some plot points felt melodramatic. But I was surprised by the ending, and many of the things that frustrated me earlier suddenly clicked into place. So while it didn't fully win me over, it definitely convinced me to continue the series. Still, for my personal tastes, the Spanish thriller takes the first bracket. The second matchup was even more strange, The Red Queen by Matt Ridley versus The Red Queen by Philippa Gregory. Matt Ridley's The Red Queen explores evolution, reproduction, and human behavior through the lens of the Red Queen hypothesis, the idea that species must continuously evolve simply to survive against competitors and parasites that are also evolving. I was especially fascinated by the sections discussing how evolutionary pressures shape human attraction, mating behavior, and gender differences. It's an intriguing book that makes you look at ordinary human behavior through an entirely different lens. Philippa Gregory's The Red Queen, meanwhile, transports us to the Wars of the Roses through the perspective of Margaret Beaufort, mother of the future Henry VII. Margaret is not particularly likable. She's rigid, intensely pious, ambitious, and often emotionally cold. But she is fascinating. As a child, she is manipulated, married off, controlled politically and financially, yet she never abandons her belief that her son is destined for the throne. What struck me most was how completely she mirrors the ambition she condemns in her enemies. At one point she reflects, "I am guilty of nothing more than a righteous ambition." And that tension between righteousness and self-delusion made her a profoundly interesting figure. This bracket was incredibly difficult, but ultimately Margaret Beaufort edged out evolutionary biology by sheer force of personality. So the final showdown became Antonia Scott versus Margaret Beaufort. Modern investigator versus medieval political strategist. Entertainment-wise, the thriller probably wins, but the historical fiction stayed with me longer. Margaret Beaufort's story offered something larger, an unsettling perspective on ambition, resilience, power, and the stories people tell themselves to justify their actions. So for this challenge, Philippa Gregory's Red Queen takes the crown. As I finished these books and assembled the final panels of the Red Queen tote bag, I kept returning to the strange coincidence that all 4 books shared not only a title, but a theme. Pressure, adaptation, resilience. Whether through evolution, political conflict, criminal investigation, or dystopian revolution, every Red Queen asks the same question. How do we keep moving forward in systems designed to exhaust us? Maybe that's why Lewis Carroll's quote continues to resonate. It takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. Some stories remind us that survival itself can be an act of endurance, and growth requires learning how to run twice as fast.